afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got an incredible program lined up for you today. A little bit later, or just a few moments actually, after we get through the headlines, our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez is going to be leading a conversation with Katie Lincoln-Goldfinch, an immigration attorney out of Austin who also works as an immigration expert for the League of United Latin American Citizens. You may know them better as LULAC. So we're going to be speaking with her in just a few moments. But as always, let's go ahead and start the program by taking a look at what's trending across the border. Starting with the breaking news out of California, President Donald Trump said he is now backing off a planned surge of federal agents in San Francisco after speaking with their mayor. On social media, Trump said the city is making progress in reducing crime. He said he agreed to let San Francisco keep trying on its own. Mayor Daniel Lurie said he spoke to the president last night and that Trump told him he planned to call off a federal deployment of more than 100 agents are expected at a nearby base this morning. U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents had already begun arriving to support the crackdown on immigrants. Residents say there is no need for ICE or troops to be in the Bay Area. Also happening, signage has gone up at the El Paso International Airport stating that the video from the Department of Homeland Security does not represent the views of the airport after a takedown request of the video was denied. This, according to a Facebook post by City Representative Josh Acevedo. While the disclaimer was recently added by the city, federal officials have stated the video cannot be removed without direction from DHS or the conclusion of the ongoing government shutdown. The sign reads, quote, "The views expressed in the TSA-controlled video display do not represent the views of the El Paso International Airport. The El Paso International Airport does not engage in partisan policy," end quote. The video shows DHS Secretary Kristi Noem blaming Democrats for the government shutdown and has been playing at El Paso Airport's Transportation Security Administration security checkpoint, as well as other airports nationwide. Moving up to Illinois, an Illinois lawmaker said he was going door-to-door informing businesses of ramped-up immigration enforcement when the Democratic state legislator got an activist notification of federal agents nearby. So he followed agents' vehicles and then honked to warn others when he was pulled over. Masked federal officers pointed a gun at him and a staffer, attempted to break his car window, and took photos of their faces before issuing a warning, he recounted. Footage taken by his staffer shows masked agents standing outside the car. You can see it there on your screen now. The lawmaker kept repeating, "I am a state representative." The Department of Homeland Security told one news outlet the lawmaker was warned not to follow the agents. In a statement, DHS said, quote, "This behavior is unbecoming of a public servant and is just another example of sanctuary politicians putting our officers at risk." The lawmaker said he was in the area because he had heard that there were ICE agents in the neighborhood and he wanted to remind people of their rights. Time now to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, and our guest for today, immigration lawyer out of Austin and immigration expert for LULAC, Katie Lincoln-Goldfinch.
Hi, Ms. Lincoln-Goldfinch. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, it's my pleasure to be here.
Just a little background. You have over 20 years as a lawyer specializing in immigration and immigration detention families. Tell us a little bit, that's correct, right? You're based in Austin. You own a private practice, but you also do various speaking engagements for LULAC because you're so knowledgeable about this subject, right?
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Austin, and I went to UT Law almost 20 years ago and I speak Spanish, and I wanted to use my Spanish, so I signed up for the immigration clinic to represent immigrants. And my first clients were a family of asylum seekers who were detained at a detention center together, and it was a mom, a dad, and a little baby, and they were all wearing prison uniforms. And when I left that interview, the mom asked me if I could sneak her baby out with me because it was so horrible to have her baby in this prison setting. And that was the moment that changed the trajectory of my life because I realized the reality of how our country was treating immigrants and asylum seekers. And I've really never looked back. I've been working with asylum seekers ever since. I didn't take that particular baby out of the detention center, but I did take that case and get that whole family out within a few months. And I've been here, in Texas through several presidential administrations and seen a lot of these policies that detain and separate families. And that's what I'm after, is stopping these policies. And as we all know, we're in one of the darkest moments of our nation's history when it comes to immigration policies and treatment. And so there's a lot of work to be done right now.
Well, that's an amazing story about the mother and the baby. And so I wanted to start off with today's conversation with the most recent news. A federal judge in Denver, Colorado, recently ruled that the Trump administration, their declaration of not holding bond hearings for immigrants, denies their due process rights. And I did see a comment from you where you agreed with this judge. Tell me what this case will allow going forward, what you hope for, and why you're against not having bond hearings.
Yeah, this is an indication of good things to come. What I can say is that historically, when immigrants get detained, they are eligible to go before a judge and seek release on bond. And you put together an application that proves to the judge that this person is not a danger to the community and they're not a flight risk. And the judge can hear their case and set an amount for bond, and they can get out and fight their case. That's been how it's gone for decades now. But just a few months ago, the policy has shifted, and the Trump administration has taken the interpretation that judges no longer have the authority to review or grant bonds for immigrants who didn't enter the country originally with a visa, which is the majority of immigrants, even if they've been here for decades, even if they have no criminal history, even if they are themselves suffering cancer or have minor children with cancer. None of these factors come into play. And I can tell you in my own practice, we've seen more than 75% of the clients that we represent who are good, decent, hardworking people who've been in this country for a long time, all of a sudden, just because of a different interpretation of policy, not be eligible for release on bond. And so these tens of thousands of people are facing mandatory indefinite detention in horrific detention settings. And many of them, I will say, many, if not most of them, end up giving up and accepting a deportation because it's so horrible. So this particular case, although it applies only to this applicant, in this particular case where the judge said, I think that this interpretation is illegal. I think that this is a violation of this person's due process rights, and I'm going to order that the judge hear a bond hearing in this case. The judge also said, I might even certify a class, which would mean that this policy or this decision would apply nationwide. And that's, to be determined. We're going to find out about that next month. But when I saw that headline, I was very relieved, because this is what I've been waiting for. We need judicial pushback to this policy interpretation, because we have more people detained than ever before. They're facing indefinite detention. They don't deserve to be detained. And ICE is just taking the position that, oh, we can indefinitely detain them. And I will also note that it's important that we all understand that the detention centers that detain these people are vastly run by private prison companies like Core Civic or the Geo Group, who have shareholders who profit on the detention of people. And these companies also have lobbyists in Washington that push for expanded detention. So people are enriching themselves on this as well.
And just to clarify a couple things, I'm here on the border where historically we have seen a large number of people coming across. I'm on the South Texas border, and claiming asylum. Now, under the current Trump administration, they can't do that. So somebody's saying, well, there would be no bond hearing because there's no asylum claims. That's not necessarily what you're talking about. You're saying people who are arrested and picked up by ICE agents, which is increasingly becoming the norm, those are the people who are being indefinitely detained without bond hearings, because we're really, the Trump administration is bragging that they have 0 catch and release per month, every month, when they give the CBP statistics. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. And I think it's worth noting that distinction, because border enforcement is one thing, and that has changed significantly under Trump. But when Trump shut down the border, what his administration did was turn their sights to interior enforcement. And so all of these things that we're seeing are people being detained in this country, people who go to their legal court hearings, they go to their ICE check-ins, they go to Home Depot to find work, or they just, their apartment complex gets raided. And most of these folks that we're seeing detained in the interior either have been here for decades, have no criminal history, more than 70% of them have zero criminal history at all, or they're in some type of legal process. They're in an asylum process. They actually go to their court hearing and ICE decides to detain them. And this is because they are low hanging fruit. Stephen Miller and the Trump administration sets a daily quota. We want 3,000 people a day to be detained. And so what does ICE do? They don't go out and get the people who are hiding, who have serious criminal histories. They go after the people who are on an easy roster, who are showing up for their appointments. And most of them don't have any criminal history at all. I was just on another news show this morning talking about a case in Chicago of a father who has no criminal history. He has a ticket for driving without a license and a ticket for speeding. He was pulled over and tackled in Home Depot, and his daughter was on a 48-hour leave from the hospital battling stage 4 cancer. This is a 16-year-old girl who had 48-hour window to be with her dad, and ICE goes and does this to him. And then their press release says this is some dangerous, violent criminal, when literally all he has are traffic violations, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And this man, for example, is one of the people that could be told, and also you're not even eligible for release on bond because 20 years ago when you entered this country, you didn't have a visa. It's an absurdity, and the outcome is really changing public opinion. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that these stories are being told, because Trump's approval rating is tanking because of the way that they are treating immigrant families. It's unacceptable. And I think all of us need to be talking about it.
We're speaking with immigration expert for LULAC, Miss Katie Lincoln-Goldfinch. We're going to continue the conversation after a very quick break, so stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. I'm joined today by South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez and our guest for today's program is Katie Lincoln-Goldfinch.
Thanks for joining us. I wanted to go over, earlier you mentioned migrants who are being held in detention without criminal convictions. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is holding almost 60,000 people currently, 59,762 according to Transactional Records Access out of Syracuse. Of those, 71%, that's about 42,755, have no criminal conviction on record. Some of them have mostly minor criminal offenses. And Texas holds some of the largest share of detainees in fiscal year 2025. Why is ICE holding such a large number of people with no criminal convictions right now, Ms. Lincoln-Goldfinch?
That's a really great question, because this is not what the American public was told would happen. Of course, Trump campaigned on a promise that he was going to go after the dangerous criminals, and a lot of people believed him and supported that. And so he was elected. But as it has turned out, in reality, the people that they're going after are not criminals. They are people who have been here for many years, who are doing everything they can to go through a legal process. They're working very hard, raising their families, and we're starting to see our economic sectors suffer, starting with construction and landscaping, healthcare, innovation, tech. I mean, people who would come here and study and work are avoiding coming to the United States, and our economy is starting to suffer because people are starting to realize, wait a minute, this isn't what we were told. We were told they were going after the bad guys, but my neighbor down the street, who's a good, decent family man, just got yanked from his family. Every day I talk to people actually who thought it was going to be one thing, and as it turns out, it's something else. And I've talked to many people who are actually supportive of Trump, and they're now changing the way that they think, because this is the truth. Here is the data. This is the numbers, right? That people, tens of thousands of people with no criminal history are being held indefinitely, mandatorily detained in horrific detention centers at the profit of shareholders of private prison companies. That should be acceptable to zero people. And it's even worse when you dive in and you hear the stories. These are stories of people who have been, who are sick, children who are sick, mothers who are nursing. I talked to a woman who 12 days postpartum after a C-section was pulled over and thrown in a detention center, and she had an infection and they put her on the top bunk. She couldn't even climb into the bed because of what was going on with her. Meanwhile, her newborn infant at home couldn't nurse. I mean, these are the stories that are actually being told. And I'll say it again. The more we can talk about this stuff, the more that we can elevate and highlight these stories and get upset and tell the truth, the more of a difference we're going to make. The public response has to be strong here. Otherwise, they're going to keep going and it's only going to get darker.
Let me double back that situation with the mother 12 days postpartum. Where did that happen?
That was right here in Central Texas. I met her at a rally. She and her husband were in a legal process. Her husband's a U.S. citizen. Her paperwork was pending. She got pulled over. I think it was for, tags on her car. And they just took her. And she was one of the lucky ones who was only detained for a couple of weeks. Most people are detained for months. And as I mentioned, most of the people that I know give up. Because what I see is that when someone gets thrown into one of these detention centers, they have fight in them for about 10 days, up to 2 weeks. And then they lose it. They lose hope. It's so the treatment there.
When you say give up, what do you mean? What do they do? Do they self-deport? Do they just go underground? What are you seeing?
What I'm saying is they say, I don't want to fight anymore. I want to leave. Just send me back to my country. And people who have good chances to stay here, they have a good defense against deportation. They have teenage kids here that they've raised. They have companies, they have jobs, they have all of the things that would make someone stay and fight. It takes about 2 weeks in one of these detention centers for someone like that to say, you know what, I can't take it anymore. Just send me home. And I see it over and over again.
And, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says that if you self-deport, you are eligible to have your airfare paid for and will give you $2,500 stipend. Are you seeing that? Are you following up with clients, former clients? Are they saying that they're getting this payment? Because we've talked to a number of immigration officials, lawyers, the various past several weeks, trying to find out if anyone's heard of anyone who's been paid.
I've asked, I've put it out on social media. I haven't met anyone who has received the money. And I will also note that the messaging about it is untrue. When people are told, if you self-deport and take the money, that maybe you can come back legally, but if we deport you, you're never going to come back. There's nothing in the Immigration and Nationality Act that supports that statement, that if somebody self-deports, they can come back. So I also think that they are lying to people to get them to self-deport. And these are people who aren't in detention. I mean, once somebody's detained, it's not about the money for them or even the ability to return. It's just so dark and desperate in there that they just say, I can't take it anymore. I need to go.
And just some of the videos that we've seen by Kristi Noem, she says you may be eligible to return. I've noticed that they do stick in the word may, so it's not a definitive. You talked a bit about some of the economic consequences of what's happening now, but what about the morale? What about the public perception of this policy around immigration detention? I mean, high proportion of detainees with no criminal convictions. What is this doing for the American public's thoughts about immigration? What are you hearing?
It's shifting. The research, the studies that are coming out are showing that Trump's approval rating is dropping precisely because of this immigration issue, and that immigration is complicated. There are a lot of people who say, I don't know how this needs to be done, but I believe in border security. I don't want dangerous people in this country, and I need a government that's going to protect our country and protect our borders. And yet people are not okay with separating families and harming children and taking people off the streets who are not dangerous criminals. That's clear in the data. And so I think this is why I think that public opinion matters so much, not just at the polls, right? The midterms are coming, but it also can change policy. I mean, I was there in the summer of 2018, representing moms who had had their children taken away from them when they were doing family separation at the border. And in the beginning of that summer, I remember the Border Patrol agents would literally rip these children out of their parents' arms, and there would be screaming and crying. And as I was talking to those moms over the summer, it became clear that they started to trick them into releasing their children. And they would say, like, oh, we're going to take your kid into the next room to take a photo, or processing, or we're taking you to court. And they would never return their children. And we had a similar reaction from the public. These stories started to be told. There was litigation and there was a public response, and that policy ended within that summer of 2018. Now we're beyond a summer at this point. It's already gone on longer, but public opinion, public reaction really does matter. And when people talk about call your legislators, post online, go to the No Kings rallies, make your voices be heard that we're not okay with this. It really actually does matter. All these little actions and conversations that we have change overall the conversation that we're having as a country. And that's what we all need to be doing together.
Well, to talk about public opinion, actually in yesterday's border report, I have a story that's published about a report that came out yesterday called Texas Trends 2025 Trump Administration Immigration Policies. This was a study that was conducted September 19th through October 1st by the University of Houston and Texas Southern University. Basically shows Texans split whether they approve or disapprove of the Trump administration's policies. There's a whole list of bullet points that you can go through and read, but I thought it was interesting. 90% of Republicans and 13% of Democrats approve of the Trump administration's approach to immigration. It's very politically aligned there. But 47% think that the policies will weaken the Texas economy, and 41% say they think it's going to be stronger. Really amazing how these numbers were fairly split. So I encourage people to go in there and take a look at that. With regards to the future and policies and what you want to see change with Congress, what do you suggest needs to happen with immigration going forward?
We definitely need permanent status for the dreamers. The limbo that our dreamers have lived in now for 10 years is so exhausting and tiring, and all of the dreamers in Texas are about to lose their work permits. That's over 150,000 good workers in the state who are about to just lose their work permission. So a solution for the dreamers, a solution for the undocumented population. If it's true that we have over 11 million undocumented people working and living in the shadows in this country, it behooves everyone to bring this population out of the shadows. And how do we do this? We invite them out and we say, why don't you come out? We'll provide you a work permit, a pathway to legal status, and these people can come out of the shadows, and it could actually earn money for our economy. It's just unfeasible to actually deport all of the undocumented people in this country. It would ruin our economy. It doesn't make any sense from an economic and a humanitarian perspective. We need more labor. We need more immigrant labor in this country. So an expansion of immigrant labor programs that allow people to come here and work and then return back to their country, and have a way that we can actually support our economy with immigrant labor. Because at the end of the day, this is a nation that needs immigrant labor. Our baby boomers are aging. We need people to come and take care of them. It just is the reality. It's the truth. And so we need Congress to stop quibbling and trying to convince everyone that immigration is a dirty word, get together, pass immigration reform in a way that is supportive of the needs of this country and our economy. And that takes better care of everybody. And that's the bottom line. It's actually just true. It's not even a political statement that I'm making.
We've been speaking with immigration attorney and immigration expert for LULAC, Miss Katie Lincoln-Goldfinch. Unfortunately, we are out of time today, but I do think we should definitely continue the conversation.
Yeah, we need to have you on again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we're going to be back in 1 minute, so stay with us. Welcome back to Border Report Live. Have one more headline to share with you today, and that is that a new citizenship test rolled out by the Trump administration is being criticized as too difficult and could deter people from becoming U.S. citizens. The migrant advocacy nonprofit group National Partnership for New Americans says the new test is longer and has multiple answers rather than one-word answers that are more complex and subjective regarding American history. The group says the harder test, as well as increased scrutiny of social media accounts to screen for anti-American sentiments, are reducing the number of people becoming naturalized citizens. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services on September 18th announced the new 2025 Naturalization Civics Test in the Federal Register, one of Sandra Sanchez's favorite places to look for new information. Applicants must correctly answer 12 of 20 oral questions in order to pass, the agency says. The Trump administration says a tougher standard was needed. And that is going to do it for us today. Wanted to thank Sandra Sanchez one more time for the amazing conversation with her guest today, immigration attorney and immigration expert for the League of United Latin American Citizens, Miss Katie Lincoln-Goldfinch. Hopefully we can have her again in the near future. Before we go, real quick, just wanted to remind you that we are now available in podcast form. You can get the Border Report Live podcast at any of those apps right there at the bottom of your screen. For Sandra Sanchez, my name is Rudy Mideles. Have a wonderful day.